My name is Fernanda. I'm 29 years old, and for 3 years, I lived with a narcissist who made me doubt my own sanity. This is my narcissist true story, and even now, saying it out loud feels like tearing open a wound that never fully healed. I never imagined that what I thought was love could turn into a nightmare, a toxic relationship that left me hollow inside. I was trapped by a narcissist who knew exactly how to twist my emotions, how to control me without raising his hand, how to destroy me with silence and manipulation. The first cuts were invisible. They were small words that seemed harmless at first, comments disguised as jokes, subtle criticisms that slowly ate away at me. He would say things like, "You're too sensitive, Fernanda. You always take things the wrong way." If I tried to explain how I felt, he would roll his eyes, laugh, or dismiss me completely. It wasn't yelling, it wasn't obvious violence, but it was psychological abuse, designed to make me question myself. Living with a narcissist means learning that pain doesn't always come from shouting. Sometimes it comes from silence, from the absence of warmth, from the way your words are twisted until you don't even recognize them anymore. I remember once, I was excited to tell him about a small achievement at work. I had been praised by my boss for finishing a project ahead of time. When I shared the news, expecting at least a smile, he looked at me and said, "So what? That's your job. Don't act like it's something special." The joy drained from me instantly. In that moment, I felt small, unworthy, invisible. That was the kind of narcissist control he had over me, taking something good and making it meaningless, taking my pride and turning it into shame. At first, I told myself I was overreacting. That's what he made me believe. Every time I felt hurt, he insisted I was imagining things. "You always dramatize, Fernanda. You create problems that don't exist." That's the poison of narcissist manipulation. It sneaks into your mind, makes you doubt your feelings, your instincts, even your memory. Slowly, I stopped trusting myself. I was living with a narcissist who convinced me that my reality was wrong, and his version of it was the only truth. There was a night I'll never forget. We had a small argument about dinner, something as meaningless as forgetting to buy his favorite drink. He sat across from me in silence for hours, refusing to answer when I asked what was wrong. The silence was heavier than any scream. Eventually, he said, "You're impossible to live with. No wonder no one stays with you. I'm the only one patient enough to tolerate you." Those words cut deeper than a knife. I started believing that he was right, that maybe I was the problem, that maybe no one else would ever love me. That's how narcissist abuse traps you. It convinces you that the prison you're in is the only place you deserve to be. Looking back, I see the pattern so clearly. But at the time, I couldn't. Every little criticism, every cold shoulder, every distorted word, they became my normal. I was trapped in a gaslighting story that blurred the lines between truth and lies, between love and control. He isolated me from my friends slowly, always with subtle excuses. "They don't understand us, Fernanda. They're jealous. They just want to ruin what we have." And so, one by one, I stopped seeing the people who could have reminded me of who I was. Isolation became my invisible prison. What made it so cruel was the way he shifted so easily between cruelty and affection. After breaking me down, he would suddenly be sweet, apologetic, telling me he loved me, that I was his everything. And I clung to those rare moments of tenderness like a drowning person clings to air. That's what kept me in this toxic love, the hope that maybe the man I first met was still there, hidden beneath the coldness and manipulation. But he wasn't. That man was an illusion, and I was too broken to see it. Living with a narcissist isn't just surviving emotional abuse, it's surviving confusion, self-doubt, and humiliation that eats away at your identity day after day. He didn't just criticize me, he erased me. I started changing the way I dressed because he mocked my clothes. I stopped wearing makeup because he said I looked desperate. I even changed the way I laughed because he told me my laugh was annoying. Piece by piece, I was disappearing. That's what narcissist control does. It doesn't just dominate your actions, it rewires your very sense of self. Sometimes, when I tried to defend myself, he would turn it back on me. If I cried, he'd say, "See, this is why no one takes you seriously. You're always crying, you're weak." If I stayed quiet, he'd accuse me of giving him the silent treatment. There was no winning, no safe place, no way to exist without being wrong. That's the cruelty of narcissist abuse. No matter what you do, it's never enough. and yet you're too afraid to stop trying. I look back now and I wonder how I didn't see it sooner. But the truth is, when you're trapped by a narcissist, you stop trusting your own eyes. You believe the lies. You swallow the insults. You learn to live in the fog of gaslighting. And the worst part? You begin to believe that this is what love looks like. Control, humiliation, fear, and shame. This is only the beginning of my narcissist confession. It's hard to tell, because every memory still feels raw. Every word still echoes in my head. But I need to say it, because silence was what kept me imprisoned for so long. And maybe, just maybe, sharing my emotional abuse story will help another woman recognize the signs of narcissist manipulation before it's too late. The gaslighting didn't happen all at once. It was like water dripping slowly, wearing down stone. At first, I thought he just had a sharp way of joking. But then the jokes became daily, the remarks more cutting, and the lies more twisted. Living with a narcissist means living in a fog, a constant state of confusion where nothing feels solid. I was inside a toxic relationship where even my own memories couldn't be trusted. One night, I found a text message on his phone. It was late, and he had fallen asleep on the couch. The screen lit up with a message from a woman I didn't know. "I miss you already." My heart sank. I felt a rush of heat, like the ground had disappeared beneath me. When I confronted him the next morning, my hands trembling, he didn't get nervous. He didn't even try to hide. Instead, he smirked and said, "That's just a friend messing around. You're so paranoid, Fernanda. Always inventing drama." I wanted to believe him, but deep down, I knew it wasn't just a joke. Yet he said it with such certainty, such calmness, that I started to question myself. Was I really paranoid? Was my jealousy the problem? This was the heart of narcissist manipulation. He didn't just lie to me. He made me feel guilty for even suspecting the lie. Another time, I found lipstick smudged on his collar. I don't even wear that shade. But when I asked him, he laughed in my face. "That's yours, Fernanda. Don't you remember? You wore that shirt once when you hugged me after work." He said it so casually, so convincingly, that I froze. Did I? Maybe I had forgotten. My mind started racing, trying to fill in blanks that weren't real. That's the essence of a gaslighting story. The victim becomes the detective of her own life, searching for proof of things that should be obvious, only to be told over and over that she's crazy. Little by little, I stopped asking questions. Every time I did, it was turned back on me. If I asked where he had been, he'd say, "Why are you so obsessed with me? Can't I have space?" If I noticed inconsistencies, he'd reply, "You never listen. You always twist my words. You're impossible to talk to." I started apologizing for things I hadn't even done. That was his control. I was always the guilty one, and he was always the victim of my supposed hysteria. He had a way of rewriting history. If we argued, the next day he would retell the story as if I had been the aggressor. "You yelled at me, Fernanda. You're the one who lost control, not me." I would stand there, confused, replaying the argument in my mind, trying to remember every word. But the more he insisted, the more doubt grew inside me. Maybe I had raised my voice. Maybe I had gone too far. That's how narcissist abuse works. The truth gets erased, and in its place, you're left with a version that benefits him and destroys you. One of the cruelest things he did was use my vulnerabilities against me. He knew I had struggled with anxiety in the past, and he used it like a weapon. "You need help, Fernanda. You're unstable. No wonder you imagine things all the time." The more he repeated it, the more I began to believe it. He turned my greatest fears into proof of his lies. That was his power. Narcissist control built on fear and shame, making me feel defective, unworthy, broken. The lies were endless. If he didn't come home at night, there was always an excuse. Working late, car trouble, visiting a cousin. When the stories didn't add up, he attacked me for noticing. "Why do you keep interrogating me? You're suffocating. You're making me not want to come home at all." And instead of standing my ground, I apologized. I begged him not to leave. I thought love meant holding on tighter, but in reality, I was tightening the chains of my invisible prison. Sometimes he would vanish emotionally even when he was right next to me. He would sit on the couch, scrolling on his phone, ignoring me completely. When I asked what was wrong, he would sigh and say, "God, Fernanda, can't you see I'm tired? You're always demanding attention. You never give me peace." Those moments crushed me more than outright insults. The rejection was quiet but absolute. I felt like I was living with a ghost, someone who could see me but refused to acknowledge my existence. That's another layer of psychological abuse, being treated like you don't matter until you start to believe it. I used to keep a small journal, writing down what happened each day because I was afraid I would forget. I wrote down conversations, the exact words he used, so I could be sure I wasn't imagining things. But even then, when I showed him, he twisted it. "You're so pathetic, Fernanda. Who writes down fights? You're obsessed. You need therapy, not me." And I felt ashamed for even trying to hold on to my reality. That shame silenced me. It isolated me even more. There were nights when I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I was losing my mind. I replayed every detail, every word, asking myself if I had exaggerated, if I was the toxic one, if I was the abuser. That's how deep his manipulation went. He made me believe I was the narcissist, that I was the one causing harm. It's terrifying how effective that psychological abuse can be. It makes you question not just your partner but your own identity. And yet, the cycle continued. After nights of lies and accusations, he would hold me, whisper that he loved me, tell me I was the only one who understood him. And I clung to those words like they were oxygen. That's the trap of toxic love. The abuser breaks you, and then convinces you he's the only one who can heal you. It's a cycle of pain and comfort, trauma and false hope that chains you tighter than any lock. Gaslighting became my daily reality. He made me question my memory, my judgment, my feelings. He made me believe I was unlovable, unstable, and unworthy. Living with a narcissist meant living in a world where truth didn't exist, only his version of it. I was erased, rewritten, controlled. And the worst part? I didn't even see it happening until I was already too deep. This is the heart of my narcissist confession. I was trapped in lies and betrayal so thick I couldn't breathe. My story is not just about manipulation. It's about how slowly, insidiously, a narcissist destroys your ability to trust yourself. And once that trust is gone, you're no longer free. You're a prisoner in your own mind. The escalation didn't come suddenly. It was gradual, like the tightening of a rope around my throat. By the time I realized I was suffocating, I was already too weak to fight back. Living with a narcissist is like being trapped in a toxic relationship where every day the rules change, but the outcome is always the same. You lose. He began raising his voice more often, not always yelling, but sharp enough to cut through me. If I said something he didn't like, he would slam doors, bang his fist on the table, or throw objects across the room. The fear this created was worse than physical violence. It was psychological abuse that left me trembling in silence. He never hit me, but he didn't have to. The humiliation, the control, the threats unspoken in his tone were enough to make me feel like a prisoner in my own home. One night, at a dinner with friends, he humiliated me in front of everyone. We were sitting at the table, and I tried to tell a funny story from work. Halfway through, he cut me off and said, "Don't listen to her. She exaggerates everything. She loves making herself sound important." Everyone laughed nervously, but I felt my face burning. I wanted to disappear. That's the cruelty of narcissist manipulation. They don't just isolate you in private. They humiliate you publicly to remind you that you're powerless. His betrayals became harder to ignore. There were messages, late-night calls, unexplained absences. Once, I found perfume on his jacket that wasn't mine. I gathered all my courage and asked him directly, "Are you seeing someone else?" He stared at me coldly and said, "You're pathetic, always accusing me. Maybe if you weren't so boring, I wouldn't have to look elsewhere." Those words shattered me. Lies and betrayal became my daily bread. And yet, somehow, I still stayed. That's what toxic love does. It convinces you that pain is proof of devotion. On my birthday, he gave me a gift, a small box. My heart beat faster, thinking maybe for once he had thought of me with love. I opened it and found nothing inside. He smirked and said, "That's what you deserve. Nothing." Everyone at the table laughed because they thought it was a joke, but I knew it wasn't. That was narcissist control in its purest form, reminding me I was worthless even on the day that should have been about me. He also started isolating me more aggressively. Whenever I tried to visit my family, he would accuse me of choosing them over him. "Why do you need them? I'm all you need. They're just trying to poison your mind against me." At first, I resisted, but the fights grew so exhausting that I gave in. Slowly, I stopped calling my parents, stopped meeting my friends, stopped doing anything that didn't revolve around him. Narcissist isolation is one of the deepest forms of invisible prison. You don't even notice the walls going up until you're locked inside. The humiliation reached its peak at a party. I wore a dress I loved, red and flowing, something that made me feel alive for once. As soon as he saw me, he sneered, "You look desperate. Everyone will think you're trying too hard. Take it off." I froze, embarrassed, but I didn't change. Later, at the party, he whispered loud enough for others to hear, "She thinks she's beautiful, but she just looks cheap." I wanted the ground to swallow me. That night, when we got home, he ignored me completely, leaving me sobbing alone. That was his punishment. Humiliation followed by cold silence. The escalation wasn't just about insults or betrayal. It was about erasing me piece by piece. I started losing weight without realizing it, skipping meals because I had no appetite. Sleep became impossible. My body was breaking under the weight of psychological abuse, but when I mentioned feeling exhausted, he said, "Of course you're tired, Fernanda. You drain yourself with all your imaginary problems. You should be grateful I even put up with you." Gratitude. That's what he demanded, as if surviving his abuse was a favor he was doing for me. There was one night I'll never forget. We were supposed to go out with friends, but I had been crying all afternoon after another fight. When I told him I wasn't in the mood, he stood over me, towering, and hissed, "You'll come, or I'll go without you. And when people ask where you are, I'll tell them you're crazy again." I felt trapped, suffocated. That was the point, to make me believe that no matter what I chose, I would lose. The betrayal deepened when I discovered he was actually seeing someone else. It wasn't just suspicion this time. I saw the messages, the pictures, undeniable proof. My hands shook as I confronted him, hoping for some kind of remorse. Instead, he smiled cruelly and said, "So what? Maybe she gives me what you can't. You should thank me for not leaving you." That was the knife in my chest. But instead of walking away, I begged him to stay. That's how destroyed I was, how trapped I had become in this emotional abuse story. Every day became a battle for survival. His control was absolute, through lies, humiliation, and fear. I stopped recognizing myself in the mirror. My eyes looked empty. My smile was gone. I was living with a narcissist who had consumed every piece of me until there was nothing left. And still, I stayed, because I believed his words, that I was worthless, that no one else would love me, that I couldn't survive without him. That's the invisible prison. You don't see the bars, but you feel them closing around you every single day. The escalation of his abuse was the breaking of my spirit. He destroyed my joy, my trust, my self-worth, but I couldn't leave. Not yet. I was still chained by fear, shame, and the hope, the stupid, desperate hope, that he would change. People often ask, "Why didn't you leave?" They think it's simple, like packing a bag and walking out the door. But when you are trapped by a narcissist, it's not the locks on the door that hold you. It's the chains in your mind. My invisible prison was built from fear, shame, and a toxic love that I mistook for survival. I stayed, because he convinced me I was nothing without him. From the beginning, he planted the idea that no one else would ever love me. "I'm the only one who can stand you, Fernanda. Anyone else would have left you already." Those words became a mantra I carried inside me. Every insult, every lie, every humiliation was followed by the same poison. "You're lucky I'm still here." And I believed it. I believed my worth was measured by his willingness to tolerate me. That is narcissist control at its deepest level. There was also fear. Fear of being alone. Fear of starting over. Fear of confirming what he always told me, that I was unlovable. He isolated me from my family and friends so completely that when I thought about leaving, I realized I had nowhere to go. I didn't even trust my own parents anymore, because he had convinced me they didn't understand me. "They're against us, Fernanda. They'll just take you away from me because they're jealous of what we have." That's how narcissist isolation works. It makes the world outside seem dangerous, and the abuser the only safe place, even when he's the one hurting you. Shame was another cage. I didn't want people to know what was happening behind closed doors. To the world, he was charming, funny, attentive. Everyone liked him. If I told anyone the truth, I was afraid they wouldn't believe me. Worse, I was afraid they'd pity me. I couldn't bear the idea of being the woman who was too weak to walk away. So I stayed quiet, and silence became another form of emotional abuse, one I inflicted on myself. And then there was hope, that poisonous thread that ties so many women to narcissist abuse. The hope that maybe he would change, that maybe the man I met in the beginning still existed somewhere under the cruelty. On the rare days he showed me kindness, I clung to it desperately, like a starving person clings to crumbs. When he told me he loved me, I wanted to believe it was real, even though every other action proved it wasn't. That's the illusion of toxic love. It convinces you that the pain is worth it, because of the few moments of relief. He knew how to keep me trapped. After a week of fights, insults, and lies, he would suddenly hold me close and whisper, "Don't give up on me, Fernanda. I need you. You're the only one who understands me." And I would melt. I would forget the bruises on my soul, the humiliation in public, the nights of betrayal. I would believe again. That's the manipulation. Breaking me down so he could be the one to lift me up, keeping me addicted to the cycle. Finances became another weapon. He controlled the money, made sure I was dependent on him. If I asked for something, even something small, he would mock me. "You think money grows on trees. You'd starve without me." And I believed that too. I believed I couldn't survive without his support, even though the truth was, I had been supporting myself before him. That's the depth of psychological abuse. It erases your past strength and replaces it with his narrative of your weakness. The invisible prison was also built from my own fear of being wrong. What if he really was right? What if I was too sensitive, too emotional, too unstable? What if I left and no one else ever wanted me? That thought terrified me more than the abuse itself. Better the pain I knew than the emptiness I feared. There were moments when I tried to leave. I packed a bag once, shaking, ready to walk out. But he caught me at the door, grabbed my hand and said, "If you leave, you'll regret it for the rest of your life. No one will ever love you like I do." His eyes were cold, but his voice was soft, and I froze. I dropped the bag. I stayed, because in that moment, I couldn't tell if it was a threat or a promise. Another time, I confided in a colleague from work. I didn't tell her everything, just that things at home were hard. She looked at me with concern and said, "Fernanda, you don't deserve that." Her words hit me like a wave, but when I went home and thought about telling him, the fear choked me. I imagined his anger, his accusations, the way he'd twist it, until I was the traitor for exposing him, and so I stayed silent. Nights were the worst, lying in bed beside him, my body tense, pretending to be asleep while my mind screamed. I imagined walking away, finding freedom, starting over. But then I looked at him, at his calm face in the dark, and the fear returned. Fear that maybe he was right. Maybe I was the broken one. Maybe he was doing me a favor by staying. That is the deepest prison of narcissist abuse. When you no longer need bars, because you're convinced you belong inside. I stayed because I thought love meant endurance. I thought loyalty meant suffering. I thought being trapped by a narcissist was proof of my devotion. But the truth is, I stayed because I was afraid to be free, and that fear was stronger than any lock. The invisible prison wasn't made of walls or doors. It was made of lies, betrayal, fear, and shame. And I lived inside it for 3 years, convincing myself every day that it was home. He only truly loved me when I was broken. That's the truth I finally came to see, though it still tears me apart to admit it. Living with a narcissist wasn't love. It was survival. It was learning how to walk on eggshells, how to silence myself, how to disappear just enough to avoid his anger, but not so much that he accused me of neglecting him. My entire existence became about keeping the peace, keeping him satisfied, keeping him from exploding. And in the process, I lost myself. I think about those years, and I see a version of me that doesn't even feel like me anymore. I see a woman who was trapped by a narcissist, living inside an invisible prison, convinced that humiliation was normal, that lies and betrayal were just part of being loved. That woman was terrified, ashamed, and desperate. She didn't believe she deserved better. She thought her pain was proof of loyalty, that staying meant strength. But really it was fear. Fear of being alone, fear of starting over, fear of proving him right. Even now, after everything, his voice still lives in my head. When I look in the mirror, I hear him saying, "You're nothing without me." When I feel proud of something, I hear, "So what?" That's not impressive. That's the aftershock of narcissist abuse. It doesn't end when the relationship ends. It lingers. It echoes. It crawls into your skin and makes you doubt your own reflection. This trauma doesn't fade easily. It marks you. It shapes the way you breathe, the way you trust, the way you love. There were days when I wanted to scream the truth out loud, to tell everyone what he was doing behind closed doors. But shame silenced me. Fear silenced me. And most of all, the belief that no one would understand. That's why so many emotional abuse stories remain untold, because speaking them feels like betraying yourself, like exposing the ugliest parts of your soul. I stayed for 3 years. 3 years of lies, gaslighting, control, humiliation, isolation. 3 years of being erased, rewritten, broken down. And when I finally left, if you can even call it leaving, it wasn't with courage. It wasn't with strength. It was with exhaustion. I was too tired to keep fighting, too tired to keep surviving a love that felt like slow death. I didn't leave because I believed I deserved better. I left because I couldn't breathe anymore. But even now, free from his physical presence, I carry him inside me. The manipulation, the insults, the fear, they don't vanish with distance. They linger like shadows. I question myself constantly, wondering if I'm imagining things, if I'm overreacting, if maybe I'm the problem. That's the deepest wound of narcissist abuse. It teaches you to distrust your own mind, and yet somewhere inside, beneath the wreckage, there's a whisper, a small, fragile voice that says, "This isn't love. This was never love." That voice is faint, but it's mine. It's the part of me he couldn't kill, no matter how hard he tried. When I think back to the night he gave me an empty box for my birthday and told me it was what I deserved, I realize now, he wasn't just giving me nothing. He was trying to convince me that I was nothing. But I'm not. I may be broken, scarred, and haunted, but I'm not nothing. And though I don't know if I'll ever fully heal, I know I don't want to live inside that invisible prison anymore. This is my narcissist confession, my emotional abuse story. I don't share it for sympathy. I don't share it for closure. I share it because silence is what kept me chained. And speaking, even if my voice trembles, is what might one day set me free. He made me doubt my sanity. He made me believe I was worthless. He made me feel trapped in a toxic relationship where pain was disguised as love. But he did not destroy the last piece of me that still hopes. And that piece, small, fragile but alive, is what I cling to now. Because I don't want to be broken anymore.